The Jin dynasty, rising from the ashes of the legendary Three Kingdoms period. It was a dynasty that was filled with political instability, and at the center of this storm was one of the most infamous and fascinating empresses in Chinese history, Empress Jia Nanfeng. Ambitious and ruthless, Empress Jia seized power not to govern, but simply to dominate. She controlled the throne through her easily manipulated husband, Emperor Hui, but had little interest in the stable running of the empire. She eliminated rivals and installed her own corrupt family members in power. Her personal behavior also shattered every standard of imperial decorum. Historical texts described her as coarse in her manners, violently jealous, and known for taking lovers from outside the palace. Her cruelty was legendary, with accounts of her personally attacking other pregnant consorts to ensure her own dominance. This chaotic mismanagement of the empire and shocking personal misconduct sparked devastating civil wars that crippled the Western Qing dynasty. It was in direct response to this behavior that a respected court official, Zhang Hua, wrote the poem titled Admonitions of the Instructress to the Court Ladies. This poem served a dual purpose. On one hand, it was a moral lecture intended to deliver strong advice and clear warnings about proper etiquette. But on the other hand, it was also a survival guide for how consorts could navigate treacherous court politics and ensure their own safety. Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel. I'm Amy. Today we're going to explore a famous ancient guide for consorts in the Chinese imperial harem. When viewed today, many of its virtues and lessons can be seen as deeply restrictive. But let's bear in mind that in the highly patriarchal society of ancient China, there were many expectations of women that may seem ridiculous to us today. So what exactly were these rules? And how did this guide shape the harem rules of later dynasties, such as the Qing dynasty? And ever wonder why the imperial consorts in Chinese dramas behave the way they do? Let's find out. Zhang Hua, the poet who penned the Admonitions of the Instructress, tragically fell victim to the political storms of his era. But while the man himself was gone, his powerful poem survived, carrying with it a very specific vision of ideal consort behavior for the imperial court. When we look at this today, it's impossible not to see how demanding its expectations were. This poem promoted a strict code of Confucian virtue, creating what you could call a moral compass. Yet it's a compass that points almost exclusively towards ideals like deference, propriety, and a consort's submission to the established social order. For the ladies of the court, their value was often defined by how perfectly they fit within these narrow, prescribed roles. And while the Admonitions began as a poem, its influence grew immensely, partly because it didn't just stay as text. Today, we also know it as a famous art scroll, which brings up an obvious question. If Zhang Hua was a poet, how did his words get turned into a series of paintings? This is where a renowned painter named Gu Kaizhi comes into the picture. Living a few decades after Zhang Hua, Gu Kaizhi was tasked, or perhaps inspired, to bring these demanding lessons for court ladies to life visually. Turning the poem into a series of elegant paintings was a powerful move. It transformed the abstract rules of behavior into a tangible and beautiful guidebook. And it is this very painted guidebook, born from Zhang Hua's words and Gu Kaizhi's brushes, that is now our key. So let's turn to its scenes and finally explore the intricate and often unforgiving etiquette intended for the ladies of the Qing dynasty's imperial court. Before Zhang Hua gets into the specific do's and don'ts for the court ladies, it's interesting to see the philosophical foundation he builds for his guide. He doesn't just list expectations, he frames them within the very order of the universe, creating a powerful and deeply restrictive logic to justify the advice that follows. To do this, the poem's opening lines immediately introduce the ancient concept of yin and yang. This idea is a cornerstone of Taoist philosophy that had become fundamental to broader Chinese thought. Divides the universe into two opposing but complementary forces. Yang is the masculine principle of strength and assertiveness, while yin is the feminine principle of submission, softness, and gentleness. Building on this cosmic foundation, Zhang Hua argues that the social hierarchy isn't just a human custom, but should be seen as a natural and universal requirement. This immediately places an immense weight of responsibility on every court lady, framing her personal conduct as a matter of imperial importance. Imagine if the fate of the entire world depended on your own personal behavior. Maybe a little silly, but what would you do? After setting the cosmic stage, Zhang Hua defines the ideal woman who is meant to exist within it, tying her required virtues to the Yin principle. This next passage describes the ideal woman with the opening line, "A woman's virtue values gentleness." This directly aligns a woman's value with the Yin quality of softness, in deliberate contrast to the expected strength of the masculine Yang. The poem goes on to praise a woman who contains her brilliance, knows her proper place within the household, and manages domestic affairs with diligence. And from a modern perspective, this definition of female excellence is shockingly limited. Qualities we often celebrate today, like ambition, independence, or having a powerful voice, are completely irrelevant to a woman's worth according to this guide. Of course, this wasn't created in a vacuum. These values were a product of the highly patriarchal society of its time, designed to reinforce the very social expectations that kept the structure in place. Having set the stage in the opening of his poem, Zhang Hua then turned to the specific examples and more direct advice to explain the virtues and warn against the dangers awaiting ladies in the imperial court. The very title of his work, The Admonitions of the Instructress to the Court Ladies, tells us a good deal about how these lessons were intended to be understood and perhaps even delivered. The 女史, or lady instructress, was typically a respected, highly educated woman of rank within the palace. Her important role was to teach and guide other court ladies on matters of history, ceremonial rites, and proper conduct. Now, we will go through these actual lessons that Zhang Hua was trying to teach and imagine them being imparted through the wise counsel of a guiding 女史. To begin his specific examples, Zhang Hua first described two historical court ladies who were praised for using personal sacrifice to correct their ruler's behavior. The first is Lady Fan, the wife of King Zhuang of Chu, who protested her husband's excessive hunting by refusing to eat fresh meat. The second is the Lady of Wei, who protested her husband Duke Huan's obsession with decadent music by refusing to listen to it. The poem praises both, claiming that because their righteousness was high, their husbands were essentially shamed into changing their ways. The lesson presented is that a consort could use personal sacrifice as a tool to guide her husband back to the proper path. Another powerful example Zhang Hua highlights is a story of bravery from the earlier Han Dynasty, featuring a consort named Lady Feng. This scene is meant to emphasize courage and what was seen as self-devotion. During an imperial animal show, a bear escapes and charges Emperor Yuan of Han. While everyone else, including male guards, panics, Lady Feng steps directly in its path to shield him. The lesson Zhang Hua is teaching here is that a consort's ultimate duty, her highest expression of loyalty, is her willingness to die for the emperor without hesitation. This wasn't just about general courage, it was about a system that valued a consort's life as less important as the emperor's. Her devotion is measured by her readiness for self-sacrifice, reinforcing the idea that her entire existence was bound to and in service of the emperor. I don't know about you, but there's not much I can do against a bear. The emperor is certainly important, but it seems to me like the lesson here is to have more capable guards. Next, Zhang Hua presents another famous consort, Lady Ban. This time, the virtue being illustrated is not physical courage, but what was considered wisdom and propriety. The story refers to Emperor Chen of Han, inviting Lady Ban to ride alongside him in his personal carriage. While this is a huge sign of imperial favor, she declined. Her reason was that an emperor should be seen with his ministers, not his consorts, to avoid any perception of impropriety. In a treacherous court full of jealous rivals, accepting such a visible honor would have painted a target on her back, so her refusal could be seen as an act of self-preservation. Zhang Hua uses this story to teach a lesson in court politics and the careful management of imperial favor. And it's a lesson that's still true today. Sometimes the smartest move is to know when to lay low. After presenting stories of specific court ladies, the poem changes pace and shifts to more personal advice about daily palace life. Here, the poem delivers a philosophical truth. Everything that rises must fall. It uses powerful metaphors from nature to remind us that all worldly glory is temporary. Just as the sun begins to set the moment it reaches its peak, the moon begins to wane the moment it is full. The passage warns that high status is as fragile as a pile of dust, and a fall from grace can be as sudden and shocking as the trigger of a crossbow. The painting illustrates this complex idea. We see a mountain teeming with life, but also containing danger. On the mountain itself, a hunter takes aim at a tiger with his crossbow, perfectly visualizing the final line's warning about a fall from grace being as sudden as a crossbow shot. It's a powerful reminder that even at the height of one's power and glory, danger and decline are always lurking. Zhang Hua uses the image of a lady at her dressing table to discuss the nature of beauty and self-worth. This passage teaches that true and lasting worth comes from inner virtue, discipline, and wisdom, not just from outward charm, which could be fleeting and superficial. Here, the guide promotes social harmony and order from a Confucian perspective, which supports inner character qualities like gentleness, deference, and submission, traits that ensured a consort would fit seemingly into her role within the palace hierarchy. A lesson about valuing inner characters over physical appearance? This lesson sounds almost modern, but we definitely value a lot more qualities today compared to the limited scope of an imperial harem. Zhang Hua then offers a crucial warning about the impact of one's words and the importance of maintaining integrity, even in the most private settings. This is visualized as a scene within a bedchamber, emphasizing the intimate yet crucial nature of this advice. The advice in this passage is almost universal. Be good with your words, and people will trust you. Speak carelessly, and you'll create suspicion even with your partner. This passage suggests that a consort is always being watched and judged. It instills a need for relentless self-censorship, ensuring that a consort was on guard at all times, because her true character, revealed through her words, could be used against her at any moment. And to be clear, this danger of misspeaking in a treacherous court wasn't exclusive to consorts. Male officials and advisors faced immense scrutiny as well, where a wrong word could easily lead to exile or execution. This passage focuses on the dangers of arrogance for a consort who achieves high status and points her towards what Zhang Hua considered her ultimate purpose, producing heirs. The passage opens with what seems like universal wisdom. Don't be arrogant in your success, because pride comes before a fall. It advises a court lady not to rely on her noble status, as even those at the very top can be brought down. It uses the metaphor learning from the lesser stars, which in classical poetry often meant that concubines should know their place and not try to outshine the empress. This is a clear instruction for consorts to remain humble and cautious, even in glory. But it's the final line of this passage that reveals the poem's true focus for a consort's ambition. After telling her to avoid personal glory, the text offers a different path to security with a piece of very direct advice: have many children. And this lesson is perhaps the one we see play out most clearly in the imperial harem of later dynasties, where a consort's favor and security became deeply tied to the political value of her children. This next passage offers some harsh but practical advice on how to navigate the dangerous world of imperial favor. The poem warns that trying to monopolize the emperor's attention is a surefire way to make powerful enemies. It also points out a simple truth about human nature. Getting too much favor often leads to arrogance, and arrogance leads to careless mistake and eventual downfall. But the most crucial lesson here is the reminder that the emperor's affection could change in an instant and could never be relied on for true permanent safety. The text then criticizes relying on beauty and charm to maintain one's standing. In the political world of the palace, these were seen as a weak foundation for real influence. The guide encourages basing one's position on more stable, respected qualities like dignity and proper ethical conduct. It's a lesson in understanding that true security in the court comes not from fleeting charm, but from building a solid foundation of virtue and propriety. Finally, Zhang Hua's poem concludes with the direct voice of the Nü Shi, the lady instructress herself. She advises the consorts to be cautious and reverent in all that they do, promising that this is how blessings and good fortune will arise. She encourages them to be tranquil and respectful, and to engage in self-reflection, stating that this is how they can expect to achieve glory and honor. It's represented as a final parting message, encouraging consorts to internalize these lessons for their own well-being. While these guidelines may seem excessive today, we must recognize that an important part of their original intent was to help consorts survive and stay safe in a treacherous court environment. And this brings us full circle, right back to Empress Jia Nanfeng. The admonitions laid out a path of caution and propriety as the way for a consort to survive. Empress Jia rejected that path completely. She was not cautious, she was disrespectful. She was not reverent, she was ruthless. And she engaged not in self-reflection, but in a relentless pursuit of power. By making countless powerful enemies, she gave them the perfect excuse to remove her. In the year 300 CE, she was overthrown in a coup and forced to take her own life. Her downfall became a grim lesson about the very dangers the admonitions was written to prevent. While Zhang Hua's admonitions was written to address the crisis of his own Qing dynasty, its influence didn't end there. But did it actually change the official rules for imperial harems in later dynasties? While we cannot draw a straight line from this one poem to a specific law, we can certainly see how the ideals it promoted could have influenced the systems for consorts of later dynasties. For example, let's take a look at the highly disciplined court of the Qing dynasty. The Qing emperors were masters of control and didn't leave such matters to chance. They established the powerful imperial household department, or Neiwufu, to enforce a complex code of conduct for everyone living in the Forbidden City. And when you look at these detailed regulations, they often feel like a direct echo of the ancient admonitions. These regulations created a strict A-rank hierarchy for imperial consorts. Each rank, from the empress down to the lowest level attendant, had precisely defined rules for her clothing, her daily meals, her allowance for candles and charcoal, and even the number of eunuchs and maids she was assigned. To overstep these bounds was a serious offense, turning the abstract virtue of humility into a rigid daily reality. I previously made a video that goes deeper into the imperial harem ranking of the Qing dynasty, linked above. The warning in the admonitions to be careful with one's words became a core principle of Qing harem management. The regulation strictly forbade consorts from meddling in state affairs, spreading gossip, or forming political factions. They were expected to remain within the walls of the inner court, both physically and politically. The Qing system formalized the guidance of the admonitions, making political silence and discretion a mandatory rule for survival. In addition, a consort's duties were also about personal refinement. The admonition to cultivate one's character over superficial looks was clearly reflected in the Qing court's expectations that high-ranking consorts be accomplished in the fine arts. Skills in painting, calligraphy, or poetry were not considered mere hobbies. They were treated as proof of a refined inner self. turning the abstract idea of adorning one's character into a tangible artistic skill. Finally, the admonitions advises consorts to find their value not in fleeting charm, but in lasting virtue, and, crucially, in producing heirs. This, too, became the central mechanism of the Qing harem. While beauty might get a consort's special favor, her status and security were almost entirely dependent on bearing children for the emperor, especially sons. A consort who gave birth to a prince could be elevated in rank, receiving more wealth, status, and power. In a Qing court, this wasn't just a virtue, it was the primary path to advancement. In the end, the ideals of the admonitions were not forgotten, they were woven into the very fabric of later imperial systems. While Zhang Hua didn't write the harem rules for any of the future dynasties, his ancient admonitions provided the perfect moral and philosophical justification for the exact kind of strictly ordered and controlled harem system that later emperors would go on to build. Sadly, Gu Kaizhi's original painted scroll of the admonitions of the instructress to the court ladies has been lost to time, but an incredibly precious copy, widely attributed to the Tang Dynasty, can still be seen today in a British museum. What do you think about these guidelines that were set for the consorts in the imperial court? Are they ridiculous? Do any of them seem to make sense today? What would you do if the entire fate of the empire depended on your personal choices? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to support this channel and help me uncover more fascinating stories from Chinese history, please check out my membership and become a Noble Baobab. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Stay curious, stay magical.